Well, good morning, everybody. It is Friday, January the 3rd. We're off to a big start this year, I hope. I'm sitting here this morning thinking about my last recording, kind of going over things. I got a little off track with the politics and things as such. Um, so this morning, I wanted to start out and just kind of go over some of the latest news in the oil and gas industry. And I pull up this morning and there's a report. There's several reports actually, and they're quite interesting. It is a positive outlook. Well, how come for the last 4 years it hasn't been a positive outlook? And here we are, 17 days away from Donald Trump taking over, us getting a new energy secretary, Chris Wright from Liberty Oil and Gas, Liberty Services, however you want to call it. Anyway, long story short, there seems to be a transition. The liberal progressives and the Biden administration did their best to kill oil and gas over the past 4 years. They did a hell of a job of it. They restricted funding, they restricted access to money, they restricted new drilling permits. They did a lot of things that hurt all of us, especially us small independents and small business owners. For example, capital. Capital is a big deal. It used to be in the oil and gas industry, at least when I started out and growing up as a kid, after the 80s debacle and everything crashing and oil going to nothing more or less compared to what it was, that a lot of service companies would not show up on location unless there was somebody there, Billy Bob Thornton like, you know, Tommy Norris, to write them a check when they got to location for showing up, and then after the job was done, to cut them a check for what they did. As time progressed and the financial situation of these companies got better, people starting to, now I say people, business owners, service companies started to extend credit. That is where we get into problems. Credit is only as good as the creditor. And these days, these oil companies make all the money. Yes, they've got a lot of overhead, but as a service provider in a small business, is that your problem? Should you be the bank? So I'm looking at the headlines here, and we're looking at U.S. oil boom shows no signs of stopping as Shell execs say they'll ramp up spending in 2025. The next line down is Biden's moving to ban oil and gas leases for 20 years in the Nevada region, just weeks before the Trump inauguration. Venezuela's 2024 oil exports climbed 10.5%. Commodity roundup. Oil rises to start new year. Russian gas exports to EU via Ukraine halted. The fall of UK North Sea and rise of offshore wind. Yeah, right. Uh, Hochul, Kathleen Hochul, the governor of New York, signs a law that will charge $75 billion to oil, gas, and coal companies for climate change. We all know what happens with taxes and fines and all these things that these governments levy. It all goes to the consumer. You know, it's it's the same old play from the same old cabal. Climate activism is a new religion. Progressivism is a religion. Why do I say it's a religion? Why do I think it's a religion? I think it's a religion because you can't argue with zealots. You can't argue the benefits of Jesus Christ. You can't argue the benefits of, somebody's belief in Muhammad. You can't argue, the beliefs of a follower of Buddha. Those things are inherent to them and their core belief systems. So when we take the notion that we're going to make something into a religion, you start losing the ability to debate and think about what's really going on. The only thing I can see in all this is energy rises. I mean, the energy is the backbone to America. Energy is the backbone of freedom. Without cheap and abundant energy, there is no social construct. There is no upward momentum of society. You look at these countries around the world, and I've had, the pleasure of visiting some of them where there is no energy infrastructure. They rely solely on the import of energy. They are what we call a third world country. They have no upward mobility. So, looking at the headlines, seeing what's coming, a- since November, the election, there has been a strong uptick in optimism. For the last 4 years, it's been negative. Oh, we can't get funding. We can't find the investors. The banks won't talk to us. All of a sudden, those projects that have been on the shelf are getting ready to move forward. There's optimism. There's money starting to move back into the energy industry. That's a good sign. You can't argue that energy is the driving force of the economy. Energy goes up, economy goes down when you talk about pricing. We had kind of the exact opposite beginning in 2009 when the shale revolution started. The rest of the country, and this is what's funny, is it's not funny, it's sad. Those of us in Texas that were involved with the shale revolution very early on were in growth mode, while the rest of the country was still reeling from the 2008 crisis, economic crisis, the real estate crisis, all these things that we didn't have anything to do with, but the politicians did. So as things got better and it exploded and grew, there was a lot of people, including myself, that had made enough money that we're out looking to buy things. Well, I decided it was time for me, and I had the resources and finances to buy an offshore boat. Well, I go down to Florida looking for boats, and we're in Fort Lauderdale, and I get tied in with the group down there, boat manufacturer, and they kind of asked me, it's like, what's the deal? The whole country's hurting, but all you people in Texas are coming down here buying boats. I'm like, well, we're in the oil and gas industry. Well, you would think that should have been a sign. Well, it wasn't, because oil's, hovering 2012, 2013, $100 somewhere thereabouts. Nobody cared about the cost. The offices, and I'll just give you a brief synopsis of what happened. So when the Eagleford took off, the Eagleford Shale, there were no corporate offices in South Texas. They were farmed out to consultants, a few employees. They had small offices. It was the beginning stages of the Eagleford Shale boom. I refer to it as the wild, wild west. It did not matter. All that mattered to the oil companies was getting it done. Get the well drilled, get it fracked, get the oil, the gas in the pipeline. We don't care what it costs. Solve the problem and keep it from going down. Shut in issues because of H2S, paraffin things, rejected loads of oil. All those things were big because they were looking for IP. We had to have these high IPs to be able to get the investors to get into it and get Wall Street involved in it. Wall Street had the money, the oil and gas companies did not. So we went from a situation where we had the wild, wild west, anything went. One company might have 30 vendors. They had some preferred vendors, but they could get anything done at any time by picking up the phone and calling somebody. So without the interference of Houston, Dallas, Denver, what have you, these wells, these leases, this oil, this gas got sold. There was not somebody sitting in an office that had corporate relationships with this company or that company. They were too focused on whatever else they were focused on until it just got too big. So what happened when it got too big? That's when the majors started buying the little independents out. They started putting in these big corporate offices. They started evaluating the relationships that these consultants and stuff had within the area. I watched BHP come in, and where they had 15 vendors, they now had three. Those three vendors could not keep up with the business. So those three vendors would sub the work out to smaller companies to get it done that had already been doing the work. Well, and as that happened, the field guys lost control. They had no say so. Everything started going through an engineer in an office somewhere. So all the shady stuff that they were assuming was happening and tried to take out of the hands of the consultants in that area region now moved into the offices, which, look, it's just the way things work in this world. It just happens no matter what business you're in. You know, people get jealous. This guy's getting a hunting trip. This guy's getting to go fishing. This guy got a new gun. This guy got a new truck. And believe me, that did happen. Um, this guy got a new race car trailer. Yeah, all these things started taking place. And I don't blame corporate for wanting to slow some of that stuff down or stop it. But what they did was transfer it. So the guys in the field somewhat had somebody looking over their shoulder and could say, "Hey, man, don't do that. You can't do that. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Keep it off of Facebook. Don't be bragging about it when you go to drinking and things of that nature." But when it got moved into the offices, you know what happened? There was nobody watching the engineers, nobody watching the production superintendents. All of that stuff just got transferred over. And that's the way it went for several years. It's a shame, but it's just like every other business. When times are good, times are real good. So as all that was taking place and the transition was happening, we end up having these shell bust. Oil goes from 100 and something dollars a barrel back down to, as far as I'm concerned, nothing. At that point, everything changed. These companies had leveraged themselves through Wall Street, through loans, and it was just survival mode. How are we going to survive? We've got to cut this, we've got to cut that. And they started looking at their expenses, which they should have been doing all along. They weren't. So as that happened and those things took place, there was a transition from the field knows best to corporate knows best. Along those lines, people stopped looking at performance and started looking at price. Price is a big deal. Nobody wants to pay for something they're not getting any benefit out of it. But I can tell you, you pay me now or you pay me later. So if you're looking for the cheapest person out there, and that's why I still don't understand. I was in the military. There's jokes about it all the time. NASA, military, whatever, any government agency, whatever you're using came from the cheapest bidder. It's a fact of life. It is how things are. You have a budget. This is what you try to do. But sometimes the cheapest isn't the best. And we're learning that. We've all learned that. You personally, you don't go out and buy a pair of Snickers, whatever, from Walmart because you know they're not going to last 6 weeks. You're going to spend the money on, if you go to Walmart and let's take the oil field. If you go to Walmart and buy some of their steel-toed work boots, how long are they going to last? Maybe a hitch. But if you go buy a set of Red Wings or Ariats, you might get 2 or 3 months out of them if you're really working. So are you going to save $50 and have to go do it every other week, or are you going to go spend $150, $200 and keep them for 3 or 4 months? Same goes with service companies in the oil and gas business. The little guy is worried about keeping the business. The little guy isn't worried about just selling you a service. He's worried about selling you a superior service or a superior product to the billion-dollar competitors. What a lot of guys don't realize is these small business owners, people like myself, we put everything into what we have. We don't have the luxury of having a big corporate name behind us that if it doesn't work, we'll just go find something else, because if it doesn't work, we lose our business. So, transitioning back to the news of the day, there's positivity. It's a shame that it got to be where it is, but there's positivity. There are opportunities and people that I deal with that are putting deals together that a year ago they couldn't even get a bank or investor to look at. So it's exciting. Except I have to look at things realistically, and just because the administration changes and the outlook looks better does not mean that the fundamentals that got us to where we are today are changing as well. The bureaucrats, the lifelong government employees that sit in these offices and come up with these ideas that affect each and every one of us out here have not left. Until you clean house with those people, it's just going to be a cyclical environment. You don't, if you're not in the oil and gas, you don't really understand the industry. And that falls on oil and gas itself. That falls on service companies. That falls on the oil executives. It falls on the marketing departments. The things that we have today, I'm 52 years old. A lot of these things didn't exist when I was in the 70s and the early 80s. There's been a technological revolution in our whole world due to the refining of oil and gas and the advancements in technology. If we didn't have oil and gas, I wouldn't be able to talk to you right now. I wouldn't be able to look at my computer screen. Probably wouldn't be able to wear half the clothes we wear. So it's incumbent upon the industry, even us little operators and independents and little service companies, to get our story out there. We need to educate society that yes, there may be cleaner and better power sources in the future, but we can't cut our nose off to spite our face because we don't like oil. And for the most part, most operators adhere to their own standards before government kicks in and tells them what they need to do, just because it's safer than the alternative. Nobody I know in this industry is wanting to kill the environment. Nobody here is looking to spill oil everywhere and contaminate a river or a lake or a stream or a property. Nobody wants to do that. But those things happen. Accidents happen. A politician could accidentally approve a deal that sends weapons to the cartel in Mexico. Maybe that wasn't the intention, but that's what happened. People don't look things, they don't think things through. So let's think this through. If oil is going to improve and the market, especially the shale market, wants to ramp up spending, while OPEC, is looking to restrict output, we are just going to repeat history over and over again. The problem with the shale boom is that we are leaving too much oil behind. It's all about let's get it done, get it out of the ground now. Let's not really evaluate what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what it's going to take to maximize that recovery. That's what frustrates me more than anything in the world. We have these assets, we have these multi-million-dollar wells that we're drilling and trying to turn into revenue producing assets. But at the same time, we're, I guess, the executives, the engineers, The powers that be in these major oil and gas companies are perfectly fine if they make a dollar to leave 90% of that oil in the ground. You know why? Because they have no intention on retrieving that 90%. They're going to get the 5 to 7% till it becomes no longer economical for them, and they're going to sell it to the highest bidder. And then some little independent's going to come in there, and they're going to scrape and scramp and scratch by to get another 5 or 10% out of it. We've done it for years upon years upon years. The problem I see is I believe there is technology out there now that if we just approach it the right way, we can maximize the recovery of what we're doing. What I've dedicated the last 10 years to. You know, it's frustrating to see billion-dollar chemical companies out there coming up with these chemical programs and these additives, and they're pushing it to the frac companies and they're pushing it to the operators, and they're making, $100,000, $200,000 per frac by putting these additives into the ground. And at the end of the day, are they really getting it back? And if the recovery factor is 7 to 10% and you spend $200,000 and it doesn't give you any more, but you stay at the 7, 10%, what have you gained? The only thing happening is there's a transfer of money. The operator spends the money, the chemical company or that person selling that chemical collects the money. They go on to the next one. They're building wealth. It's what America is about. But at the same time, they're scamming the operators, they're scamming the investors, and we are raping the environment. Those are the things that the environmentalists capitalize on. We are beholden to the narrative that we've allowed to be portrayed on our industry. The doctors could do a better job. Lawyers could do a better job. Hell no, we all know that politicians can do a way better job, but it's always about the money. So I believe that there is, and there are technologies that can improve recovery to the point where these big operators that are drilling these wells in these shale basins could maximize recovery for little to no cost of what they're already spending. But they've got a wall built around them. That wall is corporate relationships, brother-in-law situations, friendships. I went to college with this guy. He was a fraternity brother, or he's married to my sister-in-law. That's my son-in-law. All these things, all these law deals come into play. I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but I know of several companies that have made millions of dollars in the oil industry with chemicals that they claim do something but don't. And here's this guy, little guy he is from South Texas, Cuero, Texas, little nowhere town other than football. And I can't catch a break. I did in the past. I did when it wasn't controlled by a Houston office or Denver office or Dallas office, when the guys in the field that were there every day putting the work in were able to see and witness better performance from better people and better products. They were given the power to make that decision. I'm not going to mince words, and I'm not going to lie about it. There's a reason why I became successful, and there's a reason why all the carpet was ripped out from underneath me. The reason was first of all, politics. When things go south, changes happen. When change happens, those guys are sitting in the ivory tower, hadn't been in the field, sweating and bleeding and run up and down the highway 20 hours a day. They think they know better. They don't come in and ask, hey, Why are you using this company? What is the benefit to us? They aren't looking at the quarterly reports and the LOE and the BOE reports, and they're not researching the average cost of things throughout the whole play. They're just deciding I can cut costs and I'm going to get rid of this. And they do. And the little guy that didn't sit in their ivory office and kiss their ass gets thrown out the door. And it's a dog eat dog world. I've learned it, and I want to say I'm past it. I still hurt over it because it hurt me financially, not because our products didn't work or our service wasn't superior. It was just we lost the political game. We didn't play it because I'm not that kind of person. I believe in doing what you're hired to do it better than your competitor, take that worry off of the operator, and let the chips fall where they may. Well, the chips didn't fall where I wanted them to, and that's just life. I think we've all been there and all can relate to something like that. So I sit here today in beautiful South Texas, the beginning of a new year, evaluating the signs, the coconut telegraph signals that I'm getting from friends, acquaintances, partners, all those things that are taking place over the last 2 months. And I'm getting excited. I mean, there's talk with me. People are talking to me about purchasing assets. People are talking to me about how can we use the XHRC platform to increase recovery? How can we apply the mobile steam unit to our assets, and where are we going to get the best bang for our buck? Those aren't easy questions, but nothing we do in this business is easy. They are opportunity questions. And all I can do is take the data that we've collected, the experience that I have, share it and apply it, and along the way, find a better way to recover oil and recover gas and improve our estimated ultimate recovery, which in turn makes people more money and does us a favor as far as environmental is concerned. We're not leaving oil behind. If we're going to spend the money and drill a hole, let's get every bit of oil we can. So when the tertiary operator comes in and he's water flooding or whatever he's doing to squeeze those extra barrels that were left behind out, when he stops making oil, we know that formation has fully been depleted. We know that if there's 15 or 20% oil left in place, it's not coming out of the ground. There's nothing we have technically or mechanically that can release that oil at this point in time. Maybe 20 years from now, we can. That's my goal. My goal is to capitalize on our own inefficiencies and improve profit margins. You would think in a down market, people would look at how do we spend money that we're already spending to give us more for what we're doing. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So as the market improves and the optimism improves, hopefully we get to that point where people are looking at other alternatives to what we're doing to increase profitability. There are a lot of things that I could talk about that probably shouldn't be talked about. We can throw politics in here. We can throw personal, stories in here. There's a lot of things that can relate to, but just for one, going back to the mobile steam unit, when I came across this unit a year and a half ago, I thought this is going to be the key for helping me with the XHRC platform. For me, it made sense. It is a steam unit that is mobile, It's not the easiest to move in the world. You got to have a 1-ton truck or better, and you've got to have some pretty good roads and gates to get in and out with it. But this particular unit allows an individual operator, whether big or small, to test different ideas or theories of what it will take to enhance recovery. So essentially, I'm a recovery enhancement guy. That's all I'm trying to do is enhance recovery. Not trying to make oil where there is no oil. I'm trying to help move more oil where there is oil. That's the whole premise between the XHRC and the mobile steam unit. So with the mobile steam unit, if you can get into a location and if you can tie into the wellhead and if you can inject enough steam at a high enough temperature and rate, you're going to accomplish something. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like you're going in there and you're punching a hole in the ground and you may have a dry hole, you may not have a dry hole. We know there's something there. We know that there are blockages. We know that there are inflow issues, permeability issues. We know there are things that restrict flow and movement of the oil to the wellbore. And at this point, there's not a whole lot you can do. You can go in, you can inject gas, you can inject nitrogen, you can put hot oil down there. But, outside of nitrogen or gas lift, anything you do is going to load the well. And in low energy environments, loading the well with hydrostatic pressure, hydraulic pressure, is detrimental to recovery. So I could veer off into the frac process right now, but I'm not. I'm going to stick with the steam unit. It is my belief that where I can tie in with this steam unit, whether it be a vertical well or a horizontal well, at least in the first 5,000 or 6,000 feet, I can get enough pressure and heat that if there's any restrictions, paraffin, asphaltene, biofouling, buildup, all those things, I can clean them out. So if you have pump restrictions from paraffin, I should be able to melt that paraffin down, free up your rods, free up your pumps. And in the process, either prior to, after, or during, I can inject the XHRC and the corrosion blend of this, corrosion chemical, whatever you want to call it. We can alter the environment enough to get a good corrosion treatment on your tubulars, on your casing, back around on your pump side and your rod side to protect your asset. At the same time, a formulation, when it gets into the gas phase and you can push the fluid out and actually inject steam in your formation, the steam and the water vapors are carrying the XHRC that will deposit into the rock, making it water wet, changing the wettability, changing the contact angle of the rock, thus improving your throughput and your flow so you can recover more oil. It's the same as when you inject a fluid into frac, except we're not using fluid to carry the chemical, we're using steam. Now, I know, and there's going to be people that are going to hear this and say it's not possible. You're right, it's not possible. Not every well is going to work. Not every situation is going to perform, but until we identify what is a candidate and what is not a candidate, we have to do everything that we can do. In the Eagle Ford Shale, for instance, I know damn good and well that I'm not getting steam at the right pressures and concentrations and temperatures to get out in a horizontal section. I don't have a big enough unit. I don't have a big enough tank on board to be able to burn that much hydrogen peroxide to create the steam through the decomposition in the catalyst. But the theory is, if we can prove that this can at least clean your vertical sections down to your pumps faster, more efficiently, and then carry the chemistry so that it leaves a corrosion barrier on your asset, or it disrupts the paraffin and asphaltene chains so they don't build up as fast. Follow that with a good paraffin inhibition product, not an average built out of DDBSA and xylene or toluene, whatever the cheapest blend can be built, build the correct chemistry to fit the service, I think we can extend performance of these assets. And it might be more expensive than hot oil, but you have to look at longevity. We haven't done enough of them to figure out if it's cheap, if hot oil is cheaper, if it's more expensive. If we can go in this and we set the program up right, and we can move enough steam and clean your asset, and it lasts for 60 days to 90 days, but it costs more than hot oiling, you've saved money. Well, how have I saved money? Well, right now, I know a lot of people are hot oiling every 7 to 10 days. You have to run the math, and that goes back to a procurement issue that I don't think people are ready to have that conversation. So the other issue that I have kind of goes back to the finance side and the optimism is when I started Phoenix Chemical in 2007, I didn't have any money. I mean, it's safe to say I had about as much money as I do right now. It was, you go do a job, you hope the guys pay you. And I did enough good work and provided the right chemistry at the right price to secure a customer that I'd worked with for years. And dare I say, probably the reason that I got let go from Multichem is because one of the things when I worked for Multichem is we had mission, vision, values. In that mission, vision, values, we were supposed to put the customer's needs first. Basically, James did not want to be a cookie cutter chemical company like Baker. These are our products. You either use them, and if they don't work, too bad, so sad. What we're doing is providing something rather than nothing. Get used to it. Well, he set Multichem up different from that. So as a tech service supervisor, if a customer had a problem and the potential for revenue was there, I came in and we developed a chemistry specific to their needs, their problems, and their field. As Multichem grew, those things seemed to be less important. And I kind of voiced my opinions about that, and it did not fit the narrative, so I was let go. So what did I do? I just went back to every one of the customers that I had brought to Multichem and said, hey, look, I'm on my own. You can stick with them or not, but I'd like the opportunity to build you a product, and I'd like to get your business. I did that. I was given an opportunity to provide a better product and better service. And I did that one well at a time. But in that process, since I had a relationship with these customers, we were able to work out a payment structure. So where I would provide a discount on my products and my services so I could get paid faster. So we agreed to a 2% and 10. So everything I did, as long as my invoice was submitted and approved, I got paid in 10 days. I gave up 2%. That's how I built Phoenix Chemical. And then as the shell boom took off, I only worked for companies that had a history of settling invoices in 45 to 60 days. I was big enough and had the income and had built up a war chest good enough that I could survive with that. Today, I can't do that. It's some of you have seen or heard these podcasts and heard the Digital Wildcatters podcast. And I've done work for some small operators. I went to Oklahoma and helped out Brandon Arrington. In all transparency, I knew that Brandon Arrington was not going to pay me for the treatments that we did up in Oklahoma on his assets. It was an agreement. You come up here, you bring it up here, you let's test it, let's prove it out on my assets, and I will help you get business. I did that. And we had really good results with Brandon's assets. He is a cheerleader, and there was no money exchanged. I consider him a friend. I spent time with him, his wife, his family, 2 kids. I mean, they're great people, but there was no money involved. And so the other wells that I treated in Oklahoma for other operators that promised to pay, I'm yet to see payment. And that's from work done in September and October. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot work that way anymore. And because of what's happening in this industry, because there's such a lag in payment from services rendered, it's getting harder for little guys and innovative companies and people like myself to get out in the field and perform these jobs. We don't have the assets. We don't have the capital. The banks aren't loaning us money because of what happened in 2014, 15. Nobody is giving money away. And we're having to discount what we're doing to be able to get the work. And then we're having to wait 3 months or longer, if we even get paid at all, for our services and our products. I can't operate that way. I'm just going to put it out there. I cannot do it. And because of what's happening, the industry is getting hurt by it. A lot of good people are walking away. And that's always been kind of one of the drawbacks of the oil and gas industry, is that when times get tough, the really good people get fed up and they walk away. And I'll be completely honest with you, if I had been smarter with my money, if I'd invested it better and saved more of it, I probably would not be sitting here today having this conversation with this microphone and whoever's going to hear it. But there's another part of me that I know, whether I had been that person that invested wisely, saved wisely, and succeeded to a point where I was able to have a legitimate offer rather than, fly by night offers that were given for Phoenix Chemical before I just dissolved that company. I would probably still be in this business in some form or fashion. I love it. And those of you that followed me on LinkedIn for years, I'll be honest, I've been not the most positive person over the last several years. I think it's hurt me, but it's been a learning and a growing process at the same time. I love oil and gas to the point that I can tell you where it started. In the 80s, when times were good, my uncles, they all worked in the oil field. My dad, with one arm, worked in the oil field as a roughneck. Money was good. All of my family friends, people I call uncles, close family friends, they all worked in the oil field. And sitting around as a young elementary school, early junior high, middle school kid, listening to their stories, I learned more about the world and geology and punching holes in the ground than I ever learned in school. So as a freshman in physical science, my physical science project, I built an offshore jackup platform, drilling rig. And nobody picked up on it. Even hell, I didn't even pick up on it. I didn't realize what my real passion was until after I went to college and realized that wasn't for me, joined the Navy because of budget cuts, got out early, and had to figure out what to do with my life. And in 1994, there wasn't a whole lot in South Texas going on. And the best paying job that you could get outside of Formosa, Dow, or DuPont was the oil field. And that's how it started. And I knew right away after about 6 months, this roughneck deal's I'm not cut out for this. I don't like being in one place all day. So I got in the service side. And from there, it just progressed. I remember getting on some of the rigs I used to work on and guys that I used to work with. Man, I'd like to have your job. Man, you got a company truck, you got a cell phone, you got a pager. Yeah, pagers were a thing back then. And you get to drive around all day and everything. Like, yep, you know what? I said, yeah, but you guys make more money. It's midnight and I've been going since 4:00 this morning. You got 6 hours left on your tower and you're going to bed. And I work 11 and 3 and 12 and 2. You work 7 and 7 and you make more money than me. So back then, for a guy to stick with the oil field, especially on the service side, we didn't do it for the money. We did it for the love of the business. And I guess that's what kind of breaks my heart today is that a business and industry that I fell in love with, that I put before my family, before my own personal time off. I put before my then wife and chose not to have children because I wanted to work. I wanted to make a difference. Has basically discarded me. Not because I was a failure, but because I failed to compromise on my integrity and my beliefs to just build a cheap product just to keep the business. That's not all on the oil industry. That's partly on me because I should have had the wherewithal to say, you know what, it's changing. Nobody wants a really good chemical, so let me just go build something that's similar to what everybody else is doing and keep what I can. Except that went against everything in my body. It went against my beliefs. It went against how I was raised. If you're going to do something, do it right. If you're going to build something, build it right. And that, my friends, is how things have changed. Why I'm sitting here in my office on a Friday, the third day of 2025, talking to a microphone. It's but these are stories that need to be shared. These are things that these new guys, you new guys coming into this business, and even you older guys need to be reminded of that not everybody in this business came into it in the early 2000s or, 2009, 2010, because it was a great place to make a shit ton of money because it was rolling and going. A lot of us came into it. It's in the valley, in the worst days of this business. When you couldn't find a job. Some of us worked for $2 an hour on a sliding scale. I mean, those things did happen. When I went to work for MD Totco, my base pay, which salary was $24,000 a year. Roughneck, I could have made 50 something. That was a choice I made, but that choice led me to another opportunity, which led to another opportunity, which eventually got me into production chemicals, which I did very well in. So life is about choices. Life is about the right decisions at the right time. And I was told by my mother a couple of days before she died that, you make the best decision with the information you have at hand. That's the best you can do. You make that decision at the time with the information you have at hand, and you hope for the best. That is how we should all live our lives. And as I look out the window and I see these red birds popping around, I can't help but think that there are people that have left me in my life that are still looking out for me and looking out for people like me. So if you're still in this industry and you're going through tough times, don't give up. There's somebody out there, and I got to believe this, is going to listen to the story, put two and two together, and give us the opportunities that we deserve. Because at this point, we're not about it for the money anymore. If I just needed to survive, I'd go get a job as a greeter at Walmart, but that's not who I am. I'm not worried about just surviving. I'm worried about making an impact in this world. And maybe it's not in the field anymore. Maybe it's on this microphone. Maybe it's in some other form or fashion. Maybe I find another avenue to make money. Maybe some of these deals that we're working on for me to buy my own assets or be a partner in some of these assets pay off. But at the end of the day, I will not give up on an industry that I fell in love with as a child And I think we can make great again. So maybe that's what we need to be focused on is find a way to make the oil field great again. That'll be a good tagline, Mofka. Anyway, I hope you guys had a wonderful day or have one. And thank you for listening. And I will try to get more involved with this microphone and eventually get some people in here that have similar stories. And I know we don't want to do the same old story, same old thing, but I'd like to get other guys that have experience in this industry, can share those experiences and be learning and growing moments for anybody that chooses to listen to this podcast and be a part of the show. Thank you guys. Have a good day.